first, the way they are and why they happen to apply to human beings. I think those are very, very vital questions, and that's kind of where we're going to end. And at the end, I'm going to, hopefully I'll have about 15 minutes to invite questions from you folks for clarification or challenge, and I'll do my best to answer it. This is what I do on the radio show on the weekends, Sunday afternoons, 3 to 5, AM 740 actually, if you want to tune in there. And so we'll do a little bit of that here at the end. By the way, if you're having trouble in the light taking notes, I want you to know that you can sit back and relax with the knowledge that you can have my full set of notes, all 30 pages or something, everything that I have to say here, plus a whole lot more that I don't have time to say, in the back at the product table back there. It's just $3 I think is what it costs, but it'll save you a lot of writing and you won't get it wrong. So we make that available to you. If you want to follow what I have to say, there's some material that we handed out that has a loose outline that I'll loosely be following. Okay? Let me start out by reading something to you. What I want to do here at the beginning is talk about the myth of moral neutrality. And I'd like to read to you a characterization of this view that I want to examine. And the characterization is written by Faye Waddleton. Now, some of you might recognize the name of the woman who is the former president of Planned Parenthood. Now, I don't read this to ridicule her, although our politics and our moral views to some degree differ. I'm reading this because I think it's a very, very well-written, clear articulation of the view that I want to challenge here. In fact, it's going to be so good that many of you are going to nod in agreement when I read this like this is common sense. And those of you who might be inclined to disagree with some things that she has to say, you might feel uncomfortable with what she says. And you might think, well, I think there's something wrong with it, but I don't know how I could disagree with what she's just said without sounding like an idiot. So let me read to you what she's written. She says, like most parents, I think that a sense of moral responsibility is one of the greatest gifts I can give my child. But teaching morality doesn't mean imposing my moral values on others. It means sharing wisdom, giving reasons for believing as I do, and then trusting others to think and judge for themselves. My parents' morals were deeply rooted in religious conviction, but tempered by tolerance, the essence of which is respect for other people's views. They taught me that reasonable people may differ on moral issues, and that fundamental respect for others is morality of the highest order. I have devoted my career to ensuring a world in which my daughter Felicia can inherit that legacy. I hope the tolerance and respect I show her as a parent is reinforced by the work she sees me doing every day, fighting for the right of all individuals to make their own moral decisions about childbearing. Of course, you know she means abortion on demand there, which is currently the law of the land. She closes with this: I'm proud to continue that struggle, to defend the rights of all people to their own beliefs. When others try to inflict their views on me, my daughter, or anyone else, that's not morality, it's tyranny, it's unfair, and it's un-American. Close quote. Now, like I said, I think that's really well written. I wish I would have written something like that. That is clear, that is compelling, that is persuasive. And I think it captures an ethic or an understanding about how morality ought to work in our culture. The problem is it's deeply flawed. And the flaw is that Faye Waddleton presumes that there is such a place one could stand that might be called morally neutral ground. Okay, what do I mean by that? Morally neutral ground is a place where you can stand in which you have your own moral views on a variety of different things. And you keep them to yourself in that you follow those yourself, but you do not make those incumbent on other people. They're your views. Someone else, in his or her own island of moral neutrality, might have different views and different responses to the exact same moral circumstances that you might find yourself into, but they have different answers. What you have is true for what? For you. And what they have is true for them. And the space in between is a space of non-judgmentalism. One doesn't judge the other. And that space has a name for it in our culture. What do you think that name is? Tolerance. We call that tolerance. Such that if you breach this neutrality and presume to judge another person's behavior, then you have violated the dictates of tolerance. Now, here's the problem with understanding morality in our culture in that way, and this is largely the way it's embraced, is that this view itself is not neutral. In fact, when you look at what Faye Waddington says, look at how she starts out. She says, like most parents, I think that a sense of moral responsibility is one of the greatest gifts I can give my child. But teaching morality doesn't mean imposing my moral viewpoints on others. Now, my question is, what is it then that Faye Waddington teaches little Felicia as she's growing up? Does she say, Felicia, it's my job to instill you a sense of moral responsibility. I happen to believe in honesty. I happen to believe in bedtimes. I happen to believe in education and homework. I happen to believe in respecting elders, but that's just my personal moral point of view. Far be it for me to impose it on you. Do whatever you want. Now, of course, if she did that, she would not be passing on a sense of moral responsibility. She would be abrogating her responsibility to do so. So she cannot even fulfill what she says she wants to fulfill based on her view of morality as she's expressed it here. And her view is simply that all views are equal and worthy of the same respect, except if you disagree with that view. If you disagree with her relativism, that all views are equally worthy of respect, then your view is not worthy of what? Respect. In fact, she has some choice words to describe the person who doesn't hold to her view. She says that person is tyrannous, unfair, and un-American. And in case you didn't note, those are moral judgments. Not only that, she has her own personal moral point of view that she's seeking to impose on others. She says, I have devoted my career to assuring a world in which my daughter Felicia can inherit that legacy. What legacy? Her point of view. And what does she do in her career to ensure that Felicia inherits that legacy? She works as a lobbyist passing laws which, by threat of punishment, force people to do as she thinks is best. Now, I need to make a qualification here. I am not bothered whatsoever that Faye Waddington seeks to do that. This is the American way. Everybody gets a vote. Everybody gets a voice. I mean, if one person can prevail through the force of logic and good thinking on another group of people so that they vote in their way and this gets passed into law, that's the way the system works. That doesn't bother me. The only point I'm making is it's not neutral. It's a point of view. It's a point of view that she thinks is correct, and not just correct, but morally correct, that she's seeking to impose on others by the force of law. And just to sharpen the point a bit, in 1994, Congress passed a law that said that you cannot block the opening of abortion clinic. There was a lot of pro-life demonstrators that were doing that, so there's a law passed to stop that. And I don't know whether you agree or not agree with the law. That's irrelevant, although I think it's kind of interesting that a woman can do whatever she wants with her own body, except throw it in front of the door of an abortion clinic, but that's another argument and another talk. What was interesting was the response of Pamela Moraldo on the radio, who was then the president of Planned Parenthood, to the law. And of course, she was very happy with it. And she said this law goes, now think about what's wrong with this statement. This law goes to show that no one can force their morality on someone else again. Well, all laws force a morality, for goodness sake, including that one. That's exactly what was happening there. She's not neutral. That's the whole point. And so there is a posturing here that has to do with those who hold this view and champion the view of relativism in one of its forms against those who are arrogant and narrow-minded to hold that they have a moral point of view that is actually correct. The only point I'm making is those who are offering these challenges are themselves convinced that their own view is correct and others ought to change to their way. You know, there was some of you might have seen last year about this time, there was a big hullabaloo around Chicago because the Southern Baptists had just announced they were going to Chicago. These were evangelical Christians who took seriously Jesus' command to go out to the world and preach the gospel, and in obedience to their Savior, as followers of Christ, they were going to go to Chicago. And preaching the gospel to everyone, including Jews. Now, this is deeply offensive to some Jews. Not to all, as it turns out, but to some. And in fact, this desire to simply go and share one's view with others was characterized as fomenting hate crimes. And so this made it onto the TV show, Larry King. And so there were the president of the Southern Baptists, you have a Jews for Jesus guy who's kind of on the side of the Southern Baptists, and then you have two rabbis, one from Chicago and one from New York. And so you can imagine this got a bit heated because these rabbis were mad. And I can understand that to a certain degree. They were upset because, as they pointed out, when you come and try to change my religious views, you are saying that I'm wrong in my view. Well, yeah, I guess that does kind of go together. And then they said essentially, in very heated tones, don't do that. That's an interesting kind of response, isn't it, given the nature of the objection? The rabbi said, one of them said, the New York rabbi said, you know what, you shouldn't be taking your religion to religious people and trying to change their religious views. If you want to go, peddle your religion somewhere, go to the people who don't have any religion. We already got one, leave us alone. Now, whose view was that being expressed there? The rabbi's view, right? It was his view about evangelism, basically. It was his religious viewpoint about religious promulgation.